Let's keep this crap train going and move on down to repetition. So, with repetition, just like contrast, I want to emphasize again that these are rarely done completely separate from each other. So, with these, I'm going to show you some examples of repetition, but really it's going to be in connection with contrast, alignment, and proximity. So, looking again with repetition, the idea is you're looking for things that you have in your designs that you can repeat, whether it's color, whether it's shape, whether it's font, whether it's location, whether it's alignment. There's a lot of different ways to create this repetition or consistency. One of the main reasons to use repetition is your designs might be used in a variety of different media. With something like this, here's an envelope and a card and a business card and letterhead. Your design might be used on a website. It might be used on a t-shirt. It might be used on a billboard. You want to make sure that you have repeating items so it feels consistent. And it's primarily used a lot in branding. So when we talked about the 8 different types of graphic design, one of the key things that you work with is branding. So it's a lot of different locations and different formats for these things. The font, though, is repeated. The style of lines is repeated. The color scheme is repeated. Even the lines breaking up the graphic are repeated. So you're looking for something that you can use to consistently repeat, and it helps you to draw attention to things, but then also make it feel like somebody has actually purposely designed this. Repetition can be built in a lot of different ways through color, shape, how thick is your line, the size of text, the texture, your different relationship between items. It really helps to organize and strengthen unity. It can also be used to not only create a sense of pattern, but then also a way for you to be able to break that pattern. So you're then instituting some contrast as well. Looking at a more practical example, here is a blues and jazz festival, repeating the hat over and over and over again, but then breaking it with the contrast at the end by including the feather and by mixing in it black and an outline of a side profile of glasses with the Be Cool. That is a way to help repeat stuff. Repeating the font size and the font color over and over again. Repeating the white and white for the headings. Repeating the black and the black, the size being the same. There's a repetition of the 3 same colors, white, black, and this kind of tan color, as well as red as the main base. Repetition is incredibly powerful. Breaking the repetition can also be very powerful. It creates a sense of rhythm, almost like a musical kind of quality to it. So you've got this dot, 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 dot type feel where by breaking it, it's going to allow you to draw attention to it. Looking here, it can be something simple to unify. This is a really subtle difference, but here, the one thing that's different is keeping the same font size and bold for the bottom. On here, your eye just drops off of the card. Here, it comes down, it hits the number, and then your eye is seeking something similar, and it may bounce it back up to the top. It can be all text-based. It could be something like this. This was for an advertisement for the Porsche, having the same font size and styling for each of the headlines, and then having the same body copy styling for all the information that's there. With having repetition, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to make it help feel consistent, even if the size or the media that you're using is different. And it doesn't have to be identical. It could be something where it's a feeling. Right here, this kind of like sketchy hand-drawn type look for the tea kettle and the little pattern of the triangles that are on there, and having these little triangles all over the place, including replacing the little dot at the bottom of the exclamation point. That type of thing, even though they're not identical, it still has that same repetitive feel as far as the style is concerned. It gives off the impression that the designer, there was an actual designer that pieced these things together. So there was somebody that was in charge. Let me show you some before and afters. Real simple little letterhead for a mom and pop grocery store. Got these circular shapes for the people at the top, little circular hands, pushing it a little bit more, deciding, all right, those circles were interesting to work with. Doesn't mean that's the only solution, but that is one possible solution. Same kind of thing here. You got a chili cook-off. All right, so you got that little wavy line to indicate that it's hot. You got the one little lone chili. You got the one spoon. It's like, all right, what can I do? How do I push this even further? Let's push the idea of Tex-Mex. You got those triangles. All right, let's get some beans in there. Let's make this thing really hot by adding more chilies in there and also adding more heat lines across the top and giving a little like fork spoon kind of feel. That is just pushing it a little bit more, finding something to repeat and adding to it, whether it's repeating an exact element or it's repeating an idea. Same kind of thing here. It can be done as a concept. This is, I follow this law all the time. It's called Parkinson's Law. The idea is if I were to give you 2 weeks to work on something, you'll take 2 weeks. If I give you 2 days, you're going to find a way to get it done in 2 days. So work is going to expand based on the amount of time you're given. It's also procrastinator's rule. So with this concept, this idea of expansion, this idea of filling in some space, it's like, what can we do graphically to represent this, but not actually using a photo? Why don't we put a border on it? By setting the top line and the bottom line, you're creating a barrier. You're creating something for it to push against, to fill up. And by expanding the text, work expands, fill, completion, you're filling up that entire space. So conceptually, you're finding a way to repeat something. Usually in class, I would be asking people if anybody can tell me the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Invariably, there's somebody in the class that has been able to tell the story, and there's others who don't even know what this is. So the basic concept of Goldilocks and the Three Bears is you've got this girl. She's wandering around in the forest. She stumbles on a bear's house, and the bears aren't there. And the bears left there. She goes around and she tries some chairs out. Big chair, too hard. Small chair, too small. The middle chair, just right. So it's this concept of going around and trying each one of these things. She tries their bed. She eats their porridge, which is like oatmeal. This is horrible. First off, horrible fables. Fables are ridiculously hideous. You should look up some. Actually, don't. Don't look up the real meaning behind Little Red Riding Hood. Don't look up what Cinderella actually did to her toe, or her stepsisters did to their toes to try to fit them in the silver slipper. And definitely don't look up the thing about how Sleeping Beauty was woken up. Or no, I think it was Snow White. Horrible. But the Goldilocks dilemma was this. It's either too much of something, not enough of something, or just right. And that's really where repetition falls in. So looking at the menu again, by adding in lines and adding this stuff in, thought, man, this will be great. Let's just throw a ton of lines in there. Lines help separate things out. But it almost feels too much. Now the lines begin to dominate. Then it's like, okay, well, let's lighten the thickness or the weight of those lines. All right, that'll help. It still feels really heavy, though. All right, so let's go to the Goldilocks level of it being just right. And you won't know if it's just right until you've had those other ones to push against. It's definitely better than this. But you'll find in a lot of design, you'll make variations. They're also called iterations. And you'll come up with, after a while, a sense of what you think is right. But you've got to go through the process first before you can really feel confident and comfortable that you've made the right choice. Because again, good design is not either good or bad. It's, is this effective, or could it be made more effective, or is it less effective? So there's never going to be a perfect solution. And ultimately, Goldilocks was just a thief, breaking and entering and being horrible. All right, so repetition. The key purpose of repetition is to help unify and create some level of visual interest. You'll find that's the case with a lot of these principles. It's about creating consistency, and the whole concept is find something, an element, whether it's literal or it's conceptual, and repeat it over and over again within your design until you find your Goldilocks moment.